everyone, welcome back to QSR Nation, your weekly source of food service marketing and business strategies for success. Here are your hosts, Josh, Beth, Tony, and Grant from the PFSbrands National Headquarters in Holt Summit, Missouri.
Hey everybody, welcome back to QSR Nation. This week we have Grant, Beth, and Tony here at the PFSbrands National Headquarters in Holt Summit, Missouri to discuss food service marketing and business strategies for success.
You did it.
Did it.
That's awesome.
Josh
you
is
finally
gonna be
made the cut. We don't even need Josh anymore.
No, I can stay
We'll
down.
slow your roll.
This week we actually upgraded from Josh. Traded him out and we brought in our CEO, Mr. Shawn Burcham. Shawn, welcome back to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. What episode are we on? Do we know?
I think this is where we're 119.
Yeah, 119. You know, but we're just going to keep doing yours, like on the every single anniversary, 50th, 100th, 150th, so that way you always get the, the main cut of it.
I must have missed the 100th.
You were busy.
You were out of town.
Okay. I thought maybe, I know we've had some great guests on the show, so
Yeah.
I'm sure I just missed the cut. We'll go with you guys, or I was busy.
Yeah.
It takes us 100 episodes to get the courage up to ask you again.
Well, maybe we can just book the next one and we get on. the
That's
calendar.
right. Episode 200.
Yeah,
We'll send that over. We'll have our people call your people, which are actually the same people.
We'll just send the contract over.
Really, it's good to be back, though. Appreciate what you guys are doing on this podcast. I do get to listen to a lot of them, so you guys are doing a great job. So.
Well,
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And speaking of doing a great job, you've actually done a different job than your normal role recently in the author realm. And so you've got a new book coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I should ask you the first question. Do you guys know the title? Is the social media stuff working? Does anybody know the title of the book?
I
Or
know.
maybe I shouldn't put you on the spot.
Here, since I did the intro, I'll introduce the book to you.
Great.
The new book is called Keeping Score with Grit. It's straight talk strategies for success, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, well done.
You get a
Good
free
job,
book.
Grant.
Awesome.
Discount, not free.
Yeah, discount.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's been a big project, and it's been something that I've been working on for several years, but really pretty extensively over the past year. So excited to get this thing out into the hands of our employee owners and vendors and customers and wholesalers and the whole community out there. So really excited to release it.
Well, and I tell you, I mean, something that folks probably don't know because we haven't talked about it yet, but I mean, Forbes is kind of involved with this as well because they love your story and you're actually going to be on their list, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Forbes has definitely endorsed the book, and really proud to have that. That's a big honor to be endorsed by Forbes, and really kind of a testament to not just the entrepreneurial story, but the ESOP story and some of the things that really kind of attracted their attention to us with the culture that we built here at PFSbrands and just everything we've done as a group. So
It's an impressive partnership for sure. So can you tell us a little bit about the book then?
yeah, it's going to be a little bit unique. Obviously, you guys know I've read a lot of business books over the last several years, but mine's a little bit more unique in the fact that it talks about even some challenges in childhood and some of the challenges of starting a business and growing the business and those types of things. So it's a little mix of personal story, but then some business story as well. But ultimately, probably get into some of the detail of the book, but it's really kind of geared to anybody that wants to improve their life or really be more successful in their life. So
Cool. That sounds a lot like, we have grit business coaching, and being successful, is what is all the foundation is built around. So, can you speak to that a little bit about what does grit mean to you?
yeah, GRITT for me is an acronym. So a lot of people think I don't know how to spell GRITT, but
Because there is two T's in this version.
GRITT, and I really explain that in the book and what it is, but I wrap that acronym really around a personal philosophy that I've had my whole life. So the letters do actually mean something, but the GRITT word for me is just something that I've always kind of told myself, even going back to early in baseball careers, things like that. I mean, just kind of grit your teeth and get through things sometimes, and just keep looking forward. So the GRITT acronym actually stands for goal-driven is the G, responsible is R, I is involved, and then the first T is team, And the last T is really one of the most important things that we talk about as a company, and I like to talk about with people that I run across, but tolerance of failure. And that tolerance of failure is really kind of the grit that people have to be willing to fail. They have to be willing to accept that if they really want to improve and they want to get better in really whatever they do. It doesn't matter whether it's athletics or their life or those types of things. If you're not willing to kind of put yourself out there and fail, you really don't reach the type of goals that you can as a person. So.
Well, I know we talk a lot about, not so much worried about the failures, but the opportunities. So what'd you learn from it? When you had that failure point, I think like to your point, a lot of folks, they're not afraid to fail. Then they get kind of stuck in a rut. They've got to be able to take that risk and say, look, if this doesn't happen, benefit is I'm going to learn that this method, this path doesn't work, and I can get a better path or better method, more efficiency. I can find another way, to try and keep a positive spin with, like you said, that tolerance of failure. You've got to be able to have some steps back so you can make some additional steps forward. And the one thing I always appreciate about you with your vision is you talk about like that 80-20. Learn a little bit from your past, but keep looking forward. Keep moving forward. Don't stop. So that's always been a really impressive thing that I see grit lived out. In how you manage the company. Your story, your background and stuff, but also I see it in it's kind of infectious with the team that we actually have here as well. Folks that know how to just get down and just get dirty and mud through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the 80-20 rule, and you can even go further than that. I always like to use the analogy of a windshield in a car. You've got this big windshield in your car, and you've got this real small rear view mirror, and that's on purpose because you shouldn't be looking backwards too often when you're driving. You need to be looking forward. So that really goes along with the 80-20 rule about looking forward the majority of the time and using the past to adjust that forward momentum.
Well, so what all? We know that probably inspired a lot of the book, but what all was the true inspiration behind making the decision to take on the endeavor and all the additional work to actually write a book?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've had multiple people tell me that I should write a book over the years, and obviously as you're going through this, you don't think your story is very exciting, and there's probably still some of that humility, I guess, in a lot of entrepreneurs that think, I really haven't done a lot of things any different than a lot of other people out there. But just continue to have people really kind of say you ought to write this thing, and there's a lot of irony in writing a book and even reading books given my past and childhood, and I talk about that, some of those challenges in the book. But really, I started this thing several years ago, and the thing that pushed me over the edge was last February when I met Jack Daly, and he continued to kind of be somewhat inspired. And those of you who know Jack Daly know that he's a mentor of mine, and some of those types of things. But when he really just kind of said, you really ought to kick this thing over the finish line. You got a great story, and that really motivated me, really kind of gave me the kick to find out how we kick this thing over the finish line. And he was gracious to give me the company that helped him write his book and actually did his Forbes book, and I got hooked up with them, and that's really the thing that triggered this thing to get it really kind of over the finish line, I guess. That's
great, because that's one of the things. Having great mentors can be very positively impactful in a number of ways, and Jack Daly's a pretty good one to have. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, who all can benefit from reading your book?
Well, I really wrote the book really to where anybody that wants to be more successful can benefit from it. So it really is a unique book in the fact that it ties some personal stuff together. It really is good for leaders, CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs. It's great for managers, leaders, but even employees. There's a quote in the book: anybody that's kind of stuck in a rut, if you will, that feels like they're stuck and they'd like to have a way out. There's a lot of good tips in there for any individual. So, really kind of written the book to help others become more successful in work and life. That's our core purpose, and it's really what I live by. So, I really truly believe anybody can benefit, and unless they don't want to improve. So
yeah, I'm sure there's something for everyone. Yeah. Everybody can take something away at least from the book, I'm sure. I'm sure writing a book has got to be a very daunting task. Just reading a book is a big task. So was there any individual part of the book that was very challenging about it, or was the whole thing just or how'd it go for you?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's. I was fortunate to have somebody doing some interviewing with me that actually draws out and makes me think a lot about the past, because those of you that know me know that I am looking forward so much. I really don't have a great memory of some of the things that I've done and some of the things that have happened, and sometimes those things just need to be triggered with some good questions. And so that was probably the hardest part, is just for me remembering the past. Again, I don't think people don't really recognize it because everybody's minds work a little bit different, but mine is just so forward focused and vision and looking forward that it's really challenging to remember a lot of these things. And I have these conversations with other people that are entrepreneurs. I know some of them face the same type of challenges, and they don't think their story is really interesting. And of course, I love talking to people about business and hearing stories. So I'm really fascinated by some of the things people do.
So, what do you think was your favorite part of the book to write then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that there's a favorite part. I always enjoy talking about our core values and our happiness rule, so I expanded on those a little bit more. Those of you that work here have seen the real narrative, I guess, if you will, around our core values, but I always enjoy that part. I enjoyed the GRITT section as well, when we actually get into the GRITT acronym and what that means. And really I came up with that acronym before I read Angela Duckworth's book entitled GRITT, and spelled the right way. But she does a great job of really explaining that she feels that GRITT is the big component that helps people, the ultra successful, get to where they're at. I mean, they're just constantly persevering through all the different challenges. And so I really enjoyed talking about that section of the book, and just some of the mentality and the different ways that people think about those challenges. And so those are probably two of my favorite sections.
Well, and that's going to be, I think, a big takeaway for anyone who reads the book. We have a little bit of an advantage because we use GRITT internally so much, in terms of whether it's just not just the acronym living it out, but we have it in with GRITT Business Coaching and GRITT Track software that we utilize internally. So I mean, it's really an expansive piece of who we are as a company. But I think as people, when they get in there and get the chance to read the book, that part there about how people think differently and what their takeaway is going to be, and finding what their perseverance, their why, to move forward, I think is going to be really key. And I think it would be a great piece for anyone, whether it's, like you said, the employee or the CEO, who's looking to just make that next step forward to help them become more successful.
Right. Yeah, I really hit pretty hard in that GRITT section on the goal setting. And again, those of us sitting in this room, you guys have heard this, and our employee owners, of course, this is the culture that we live. But just that, much like the 80-20 rule, looking forward and backwards, we have that same, almost like a 70-30 rule of being successful with your goals. And that really comes along with that tolerance of failure. And if you achieve 100% of your goals, you're just really not pushing yourself enough. And it's really kind of amazing, as I've spoke out there and talked to different people, that philosophy that kind of hits home with people, because the majority of people think that's a little bit different, a little bit skewed, if you will. They're really surprised when I say, well, why wouldn't you want to hit 100% of your goals? So again, it's just a little bit different mentality of that tolerance of failure, and making sure that you're pushing yourself to bigger and better things.
Yeah, I will say, so I started here about 10 months ago, and before then I didn't make a lot of goals for myself, but I was kind of surprised with how quickly you can change your mindset. We're very goal oriented here, so I think for people reading the book or listening right now, it's not as hard as it sounds to incorporate the goals into your everyday life, I don't think. So. Well,
and especially when you make it part of your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a really key thing. I mean, each one of us have our own, like, our number that we want to achieve, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever. We've got that, we know what that number is, what that means to us, and when you incorporate that into your life, it begins to change, and things begin to move forward, and it helps set the stage for the next step towards success, and the next ability to accept missing a goal. I hate to lose, absolutely hate it. I've never been a good loser, and ask anyone who's coached against me and won, they know that. I don't like to lose, sports, business, whatever. But the tolerance of failure key it is key, because you have to learn that, you know, like you said, if you're winning all the time, you probably you're in the wrong league. If you're the boxer, you're undefeated, you probably need to step up. If you're a company and you're achieving everything, you're probably not reaching far enough. You're leaving money on the table somewhere, you know. And so I think, you know, really focusing in and understanding on that tolerance of failure is a good thing. I think people are so scared of failing, and the negative attribute that can be wrapped around that they don't want to set that extra goal, that stretch goal, as we call it a lot, you know, and they're afraid to miss that mark. But that's something I think that you know, I can't wait to get the book in hand, read it, because it's just one of those things that when you live it, it's just so much different. So I mean, like Grant said, if you're one that's not setting goals right now, just try to start with, you know, one or two. But
write it down.
Right,
And
yeah,
write it down.
that's the important thing to down is it's just a dream until you write it down, and then it's an actual goal then. And have, like for us in our GRITT Track software, you have your regular goal and then you have your stretch goal. And no matter what, I've automatically eliminated the regular goal because I only want to reach that stretch goal, just because I want to make sure that I go above and beyond. And it's not that I'm not going to hit 80% of my regular goal then, because I'm going to go and get the stretch goal and I'm going to exceed it now, because I know that I can push myself further and further. So always write your goals down. That's the number one thing.
I think those are all great comments, and really the purpose of the book is to help people, and we all know we have lives outside of work. It doesn't matter whether you're at PFSbrands or whether you're at Company X. I mean, the real joy that I get out of things is the fact that, hey, these things have helped people in their personal lives, and I've seen so much of it help me. Everything from you know, the Colby scores that we talk about to the Strength Finders and the Gallup scores that we do here internally. I mean, those things have just transcended and helped me in my personal life as much or sometimes more than what they've done in business. So, again, if we can just share some of those types of things with other people, maybe we can change the world.
Yeah.
That's lofty goals.
Stretch goal, we can meet it.
That's right. That's right.
So you talked about one of your challenges not being able to remember in your past, but do you ever recall a time wherever you thought you would envision yourself writing a book?
No. No, that kind of goes back to my story. Up until about 5 or 6 years ago, I would say no.
Yeah.
Definitely to that. So what most people don't know about me, and I don't talk about very much, is I had a major hearing problem as a child. Until I was 8, I had 50% of my hearing, and my parents didn't know it, didn't recognize it until I had a hearing test at school. So that caused a lot of speech problems. Obviously, when you're not hearing things correctly, you don't spit them back out the same. So a lot of people would say maybe that's why I talk the way I do today. I can't really talk, or maybe that's where the accent came from. I don't know, but anyway, I grew up in a small Catholic school from 1st grade through 8th grade, and of course, when you grow up in a Catholic school, you get to go to church 3 times a week, and another part of that is you get to the lectern and you get to read the reading or response or whatever it might be. So it was literally the worst thing for me is to get up in front of a crowd, because I couldn't read very well, number one. I couldn't speak very well. So those speaking in front of people, reading, writing, all those things were my least favorite things to do. So I'd much rather be outside running around on the ball field, playing on dirt piles, whatever, as a kid. So all those things, reading, writing, all the way through college is just something I literally hated to do. That's why I say there's a lot of irony in writing the book, and even the fact that I read a lot now. It's completely flipped. So maybe it was a mid-age crisis. I don't know, but definitely for the better. Glad I picked up the habits.
Well, we are happy too.
I think it's cool that you actually, and you admit yourself that, you didn't do a lot of reading early on in your career. And I think a lot of people find that challenge, and, it's something that you've developed a passion for as you'd advance through your career. So I was just curious, is there any advice you have for people that maybe struggle to pick up a book and start reading? Is there any way they can kind of break through that wall?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, I think it was finding the passion for something I was really interested in, and there's actually a quote in my book, and I won't get this exactly right, but the only people that don't like to read are those that haven't found something to read about that they're passionate about. So the best advice I would give people who aren't reading is maybe pick up some type of a topic that they're really passionate about. That's really what it did for me. I mean, that's really what caused it for me, is I began to read books that told stories about other people that were going through some of the same challenges that I was going through. So That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah.
Other than that, maybe work for a company that requires you to
That's true.
That's true.
Well, and I tell you,
kind of an expectation there.
well, that was the one thing that when I came to work here, threw me was the fact that I was like, wait a minute, hang on a second. So you're telling me that I have to read and do book reports, and I'm in my 40s, and it was just like, but I just was having a hard time wrapping my mind around it because I'd never been in a company where I had, first of all, read a book, but second of all, write a book report about it.
Yeah.
And it was a whole foreign concept. But now I mean it's different, and thank the world for Audible. Because that gets me through a lot, being a busy dad with all the stuff we do outside of work. Audible is great to grab a chapter or 3 or 4 even on a drive, to have that going, and it's amazing how much you actually do retain. And it's nice that I can hit rewind and listen to it again if I didn't retain it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Probably should have been part of my answer, but Audible, I'm probably a mix of 75% reading, 25% listening, but Audible's been great for me as well. To your point, when you're driving or when you're doing something that you physically aren't capable of picking up a book, or even sometimes when you just don't want to read, you want to close your eyes and just listen. I mean, Audible's been good for that.
Yeah, I listen to most now when I'm cutting my yard. I can just stick my earbuds in, and then I kind of like put myself a challenge where it's like, okay, if I can get this done, this yard cut within 4 chapters, so see how long, so and that's like my timing thing to try and get it done in 4 chapters or less, so.
Well, I guess there's other apps out there besides Audible. I have found that out as we've been looking at doing an Audible version of my book, so I had no idea there was so many listening platforms out there, so there's a lot of options out there.
Yeah.
So, you go ahead.
Well, moving on to the very important question. So, when will your book be released?
We are in the final processes. It's going to the publisher this week, so we should be mid to late July. So I don't have an exact date yet. That will be coming here in the next couple of weeks as far as an actual date release, but we're within about a 6-week time frame.
Okay. And where can people find it at?
Well, it'll definitely be on Amazon. We know that. Right now, obviously, it's not available, but Amazon. We hope to have it on Audible and all of those platforms as well. It should be available in all general avenues wherever you can buy other books, especially with the Forbes endorsement. There'll be quite a few options of where to get it at.
And we'll update this podcast with the link directly to wherever you can buy that book. And as soon as we get any more information, we'll put it on our website. So you can always check out that.
Okay. Yeah, I do know with the Forbes platform, all of the major bookstores and things like that, whether it's on the shelf, may not directly be on the shelf, but it'll obviously be available through all of those major bookstores as well.
So we've talked a lot about your book. So we always wrap up our guests with what we call our quick 3. So what is one book that you would recommend other people read?
One book I probably would come to Good to Great by Jim Collins. It studies multiple different companies that have been successful, and I'll go ahead and plug another one because it's the same author, but Great by Choice kind of expands on his research. And certainly some of those companies that he originally researched ultimately ended up going out of business, even though they became great companies. They kind of lost their way or didn't continue to innovate some of the things that actually got them to where they're at. But Good to Great is really just packed with all kinds of good information for a major framework of a lot of concepts and things to put together in a good, solid business culture.
Awesome. So, okay, our next question is, what do you feel is a marketing or an industry trend that you will see in 2019 and 2020?
Marketing or industry trend in our business or in general?
Whichever one you want to do, just general business.
Yeah, it could be C-store or grocery store too, or anything like that.
Well, I think the biggest trend that everybody has to continue to look out for is just technology and the social acts, the technology side of how we do business. It doesn't matter whether it's us or anybody else. I just saw on the news last night where Uber's working on a helicopter airplane Uber that can take people places in the city. So, I mean, the technology is moving so fast. The robotics are moving so fast. I mean, those types of things they're reality right now. So all the artificial intelligence and that type of thing. I don't think it's necessarily replacing people, in my opinion. I think it's going to be enhancing people and what you can do. But certainly the shortage of labor and some of those types of things, as tight as that market is, I truly believe robotics and some of that technology is really going to change the way that businesses go to market.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And how they do things.
A lot of our guests, I'd say like 80-90% of the people have it's somehow related to, you know, digital, social, that type of thing. Just the technology basically is what, you know, is changing so quickly.
Well, it's how we live today. You know, I mean, we talk about it in Discovery Days when we talk to folks. I mean, the world today is different than it was even 3 or 5 years ago. It's not like it's different than it was 40 years ago. I mean, 3, 5, 10 years ago, the drastic changes and the leaps forward. And like you said, even with the labor market, robotics aspect, if there aren't bodies to put things together, I mean, something has to. So seeing that constant innovation and the way, I mean, life in general is just lived now is just so drastically different.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that if folks aren't investing right now in technology, or at least in understanding it and the benefits, you know, that could really be a hindrance to their growth and stability later on down the line.
Yeah, it actually, it absolutely can, and actually already is. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that are stagnant in their growth simply because they don't have the labor to grow. Whether that's they can't get the skilled labor quick enough, they physically can't find them. But being a CEO and in all kinds of groups and conferences all across the country, the biggest thing we hear is labor, and those challenges are really inhibiting growth at this point. So
The technology will be key.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right, last question of our quick three. If you could give one piece of advice to a new franchisee considering opening their first C-store, grocery store, what would that be?
One piece of advice. Execution is always the hardest part of any business, and I think it is, or I know it is in our franchise models as well, but really you can take that across all businesses. So I really talk a lot about execution being critical. So it's focus and commitment to execution is the absolute critical must, and that there's so much wrapped around execution. There's too much to talk about in this podcast, but executing with systems and processes and people-centric approach, all those types of things is the most critical in not just our franchise model, but in any business.
I agree, because I mean, the whole point when you get a customer to come in that door, if that experience is, if they don't pull off the execution of everything they've trained for and invested in, it really inhibits the opportunity to bring that customer back through that door again, whether it's business to business, business to consumer, whatever. That execution can be absolutely, like you said, critical.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that just a little bit more just to make a final statement, but the biggest piece of advice there I would say is it's not always the franchisor, it's not always the business owner, and in most cases probably shouldn't be that person that's executing. So one of the things that we talk about as a team and we've learned over the years is it's very critical to make sure that you get the right people. Jim Collins, going back to Good to Great, he talks about getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seats. But it's just so critical, and my mindset and really over the years is really just surrounding myself with better people that complement all of my weaknesses, which there's a lot of. So, and one of them is execution. So we've got people who can truly execute, and allows me to really look forward toward the vision of the company and where we want to go, and don't have to worry about really what's going on in the execution. So I say that just to say that finding the right people is critical, and make sure that if you're running a business, whether it's ours or anybody else, or anything else, make sure you get that person that can truly execute.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Well, Shawn, we really appreciate you being on the podcast today. And if you'd like to learn more about Shawn Burcham and everything that he has done up to this point when it comes to PFSbrands and growing the business, we'd love to invite you out to the GRITT Summit. It'll be September 24th through the 26th. You can visit that website and get more information and find out the agenda, the keynote speakers, which Shawn will be a part of, at gritsummit.com, and that's GRITT with 2 T's. So just be sure that you do make sure you type that in. But we really appreciate you coming in today. If you want to get more information, you can visit us us at pfsbrands.com/podcast. You can always reach out to us at QSR Nation at pfsbrands.com. So once again, Shawn, we really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
That's right. We'll see you around episode 150-ish.
Right around there. What, 29 more to go?
Yeah, or 200. We'll see.
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Thanks.
All right, for Anthony, Beth, and Grant, we'll see you next week.
To find out more information about Shawn, be sure to visit ShawnBurcham.com, where you can find all the latest happenings going on with his new book coming out, Keeping Score with Grit, Straight Talk Strategies for Success. You can also find him on social media. He has Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, but also be sure to subscribe to his blog. This has some fantastic information that all business owners or anyone in business is going to truly appreciate, and it's just some great insight. This podcast brought to you by GRITT Summit 2019. Powered by PFSbrands, join us at GRITT Summit September 24th through the 26th in St. Charles, Missouri at the Maristar Hotel. Early bird registration ends July 15th, so be sure to visit gritsummit.com now to register early. That's grit with 2 T's, summit.com.